And welcome to Conservative Talk.
And we have the Roman Special 2.0 today.
We sure do.
It's, if you haven't yet, go back and watch our Roman Special to where we kind of highlight some of the things that have massively gone wrong in Rome, especially in the Broad Street area, having to deal with the drag queen storytime incident that occurred this past year.
In the Rome red light district?
Yeah. And so, when you see the Rome red light district that goes on after dark or Rome after dark and those things, we have actually one of the city commissioners as our special guest this week. And Mark Cochran is going to come on and actually kind of talk about, the city commission's stance on these things and how we actually got to some of the issues that we're having right now.
At least from his personal perspective anyway.
Yeah, and best believe that in the future, we are going to be, in the very near future, we're going to be reaching out to the rest of the city commission and asking them to come on the show and asking their opinion.
Yet again.
So I guess this is where we kind of get started. Welcome to the Roman Special 2.0.
So welcome to Conservative Talk, and we've got a very special guest today.
Yeah, we have City Commissioner Mark Cochran here.
Absolutely. So before we do start this, I do have to do something real fast. I am taking off my my hat that I have with someone I may or may not be affiliated with, and I am putting on my press credentials. These are actually official press credentials, so I am not. I guess you can't say that I'm affiliated with anybody with this.
Okay. Well,
so let's bring on our yes, one of
and I don't know where my badge is.
Of course. So let's bring on our special guest. How are you doing, Mr. Commissioner? Can you hear us?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Outstanding. I love it.
Appreciate y'all having me on. And
more than happy to.
Yeah.
So we had done a previous special with our show here, and you said that you wanted to reach out and kind of go over some things and clarify a couple of things and
clear the air.
Yeah, we just wanted to give you the opportunity for that. Although I do also want to say that this is something that we will be asking questions about as well, and going through a lot of this stuff, and especially what happened in regard to that city commission meeting.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Anything you want to ask?
Outstanding.
Open book. If I know the answer, I will be glad to give it to you. If not, I'll find it out.
I love it.
I'll try to.
Well, that's the hallmark of any great public leader, right?
Yeah. And I just got to say thank you for your willingness to come on and, actually speak to these issues, because I know our listeners are very concerned about it, and we want to make sure that they can see that you are as concerned about it as well. So
as well as transparent.
Yeah.
All right. So we want to go back to the city commission meeting that had taken place.
It's July.
Yeah, it was July when the city commission happened, and it was in regard to an incident that happened on the 30th of 2020. And I'm going to pull up the slideshow that we used with this, some of the slideshow. Okay, all right. So, and this is a summary, at least from the perspective of what I was sitting in that meeting and watching a lot of this. It was in regard to the July 30th, 2020 fight that broke out at the downtown bar. We try and keep from naming names with a lot of this, and giving a lot of information about who exactly it was and where it happened. But as you can see, it happened on July 30th, and then the fight spilled out in the street, and the
Mhm.
business owner took what measures they had at the opportunity, and they turned on the fire hose for it. There was one arrest made with multiple charges. There were 50 plus patients in front of the bar when the police arrived. They made multiple arrests, and we have we've seen the police report as that was provided for in the commission meeting.
Mhm.
And then one man was injured. Let's see here. Then it goes on to the business owner was called from the ACC. They had a meeting, and the ACC recommended a 2-week licensure suspension.
Mhm.
The city commission then took a little step forward and voted for a 4-week suspension.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then you came in, and when you were making these, or when you came in and to address this business owner, you talked about breaches of duty. You talked about how some of these instances, had they occurred inside the facilities, had they been cited at that point in time, this business would have been shut down a lot sooner. But they had not, and they had not been cited at all, to be honest with you. And in digging a little bit, we were able to find some records that showed some of these other businesses that have been holding some of these programs that we're talking about in the show. They did not even have the licensures that they should be able to hold some of these things.
So I guess here's kind of where I want to start, right?
Yes.
Mark, first I want to ask if you could take us through your thought process with just separating the two issues. Take us through your thought process and the commission's thought process when it came to the alcohol license suspension.
How did you go from the 2-week to the 4-week?
So that's a fantastic question. I feel a little uncomfortable speaking for the rest of the commissioners, but I will speak for myself, if that's okay.
Please.
So my thought was, ever since it, and I'm going to have to remember not to say names, but ever since in its previous iteration, 2 iterations ago, before a gentleman bought it, there were few and far between, and not really a whole lot of trouble. And then when one gentleman took it over, there started to be some issues. And like I said, for the most part, all of those issues wound up spilling out onto the street. Somebody's face was cut open with a knife in the middle of Broad Street. There was a drive-by shooting. And if you were at the meeting, and it sounds like you were, I'm not sure if you were there.
I
James.
was.
Okay. So you also saw a young gentleman who is now a quadriplegic.
I did, and I heard the accusations that the mother made, but I have not been able to find anything that substantiated any of that. All I was able to find were essentially what would be considered hearsay at that point.
Well, before we even go there, Mark, can you kind of continue to tell us what that is for our listeners who don't necessarily know about that?
I am sorry about that. I'm getting into my legal mindset.
No, that's fine. That makes for a good conversation. So, Jamie, what do you mean exactly? I'll be glad to go.
Well, you just mentioned that some of these incidences, right? So
sure, yeah.
Here's kind of
yes, okay,
yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of what I want to break down to, kind of the history of that is not documented that you as a commissioner had heard from people.
So it seemed as though it was a pattern of ongoing issues. Part of the issue is when an off-duty police officer is hired, depending on who their supervisor is, in terms of if it's chief of police or the sheriff or whomever, they either allow off-duty police officers to go in establishments or not. And I know that our chief of police does not allow off-duty officers, even if they are hired as security personnel, to go into a building. So they have to stay outside the premises. And my understanding is that's the same thing with the sheriff. So all of the policing that happens, whether it's underage drinking or, adult entertainment that's not supposed to happen, or fights or anything like that, those off-duty peace officers actually don't go into the premises unless there's a severe issue. They don't actually patrol inside of the premises.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed as though there was a pattern of behavior that was happening with inside the premises that made itself known outside the premises. But if it's outside the premises, then there's nothing you can do about it because it didn't happen inside the premises.
Okay. And was there any documentation of this? Any documentation of the inside instances that were going on?
Plenty of Facebook videos.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Plenty of pictures.
Hey, you know, that's in today's world, that is hard evidence.
Well, yeah, and you know, it's I guess it's safe to say that, you know, everybody hears the rumors about it and things of that nature. I guess we're trying to get to the better understanding of, you know, again, how you all got to that point. So if we're starting from there, you know, you're saying that there's documentation from, you know, just hearsay and Facebook posts and things of that nature that can kind of lead you all to this additional suspension. Then that's kind of where we get to the 4-week suspension of the license.
Yes. So we have it where, or so now we're at the point to where y'all made the decision to take this business licensure away for 4 weeks. It was and what was cited inside the city commission meeting was that this was the first instance that this business had ever actually had any documented trouble. It was the first instance that there had happened anything inside the business that had been documented via legal documentation. But then we start looking at some of the other venues and what they're doing with these things. And with the other venues, you're looking at again, we have stipulated just a moment ago that Facebook is a very substantial piece of evidence as far as the photos that come up on this, because believe it or not, that's actually used more in court now than just almost about anything else for as far as photos for any sort of civil or legal or civil or criminal litigation that goes on. So who would have thought that Facebook or social media would have turned into the court of law, or at least a very depository of evidence. Speaking
of that, I think the thing that we're trying to lead to is, you know, there are other businesses that have had similar incidences kind of occur on the Broad Street area. Is this something that the commission has looked into, or is this something that the commission is going to look into? And how do you all plan on doing that?
So, fantastic question. I will credit the two of you. Number one, I'm not on Facebook anymore. I got off, I believe, between 6 to 9 months ago. I can't really remember. You know, it's unhealthy for the most part, just to say the least.
Agreed.
It's part of the livelihood that Jamie and I lead.
It's awful. And I will tell you that I hate that I have to do it sometimes.
Sure. Well, and that's part of the reason that it took me so long to respond back on Messenger, is because I was in the habit of checking it. And until I decided to reach out to you, Jamie, I had not been on Messenger in 6 months. And so that's part of the reason. But anyways, you showed all those photos and everything and all the documented evidence. And so the city manager also watched your podcast and actually asked the chief of police to investigate some things. So that's a credit to the two of you. And so that investigation is ongoing. I'm not exactly sure where it's at, but I can find out for you. And I need to know for myself. But yeah, so that's where it's at currently. I live 2 blocks from Broad Street. I've actually never been in Tortaco. My understanding is they have pretty good tacos, but I've never actually been in there. Crap, I said a name. I'm sorry. Maybe you can bleep that out.
Well, in all honesty, the name does come up in some of the documentation in some of the slides in the future, just because it is used as a reference for the evidence to establish that it is. So so we've gone through kind of the summary of what had happened as far as the city commission meeting with that, and we're looking now back at where we go from here at this point, and from a legal standpoint, from a legislative standpoint, from writing any sort of ordinance or anything along that line, you start looking at the definitions.
Sure.
But before you can get into the definitions, you have to find the purpose and the findings of the reason for the ordinances. You have to find why these ordinances are being written and why these ordinances need to be passed. And for that, we have pulled the purpose and the findings for this. And it says in this ordinances, the purpose of this article is to regulate certain types of businesses, including but not limited to adult entertainment establishments. It goes on to say it is recognized that such establishments is recognized that such regulation cannot de facto approach prohibition. So you can't say outright that you can't have adult entertainment establishments within a city, any sort of city area.
Well,
just simply because of the fact of the First Amendment issue.
And I want to give some background on this in the sense of, usually this is something that I'll put it this way. A lot of times in most cities, they'll have your adult entertainment section on the far outskirts or inside industrial parks where most people, it's not ideal that that's where they want to put it. And I think for all of us, we really want to know and make sure that this isn't something that's going to continue on Broad Street.
So that goes into the findings of this. It says, moreover, it is the findings of the commission that public nudity, either partial or total, under certain circumstances, particularly circumstances related to the sale and consumption of alcoholic beverages, tends to create undesirable community conditions.
That's correct.
An acceleration. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
An acceleration of community blight by the concentration of such establishments in particular areas. Therefore, the limitation of new conduct in establishments licensed to sell alcoholic beverages is in the public welfare and is a matter of governmental interest and a concern to prevent undesirable community conditions. So,
Mark, here's our real question. Seeing all this information, seeing what's going on, I know we talked about an investigation, but we've seen kind of a change in the city commission. We and I think our listeners really want to know, what are you guys doing? What's going on? How are you feeling about this? Talk us through how something like this could even get a proclamation or a permit.
And I've seen your voting record, so I do know how you vote. So I know that this is not something that you vote towards.
Well, so okay, there's a lot to unpack there. So let me start.
We're gonna shut up and let you talk.
Yes.
Okay. Not that y'all have to shut up. I didn't mean that, but
oh no, not at all.
So I am a staunch First Amendment person. I don't know if you recall the last real First Amendment issue, at least the one that I can think of, was the Crush videos. Do you remember those that came in front of the Supreme Court about 8 or 9 years ago?
Yes.
Alito was the only one to vote against it. Basically, the long of it was there were videos of people crushing kittens to it sexually aroused them, apparently. And everybody thought it was fun in terms of First Amendment, except for Alito. And that very well may be the only First Amendment. I'm still torn about that one, but I understand why the other 8 voted for it, because at the end of the day, it's just better to leave it alone, because who wants somebody deciding who can say what? And so if you decide that, that crushing kitten for the love of everything holy is a First Amendment protected, and then that gets into art. Well, dance is an expression of art. And so my guess is, I wasn't here for when this particular ordinance was passed, but my guess is that's why the protected rights of those establishments exist, because the dancing that happens there is in fact an art form, if I had to guess. The city commission, as any other commission, is made up of a diverse group of people who have varying political beliefs along, any number of issues. And even though I would say the closer you get to the state and the federal level, the more defined we get in our positions, and it's just difficult to have a defined ideological position at the local level, because potholes typically don't have an R or a D beside their name. You just want to fix the pothole. Like I said, I don't know if the other city commissioners knew about what was going on at the establishments. My guess is they didn't. The city manager did not know. I certainly did not know. And when the pictures showed up on your podcast, I was taken aback by it, and just as concerned as anybody else. So even though we do have ordinances that say that adult entertainment is protected in some instances as a First Amendment right, we also have the ability to zone out things and license things that we don't particularly care for. And I would say probably to the person on the city commission, the last thing that we want is to be perceived as a unfriendly family city that would rather tilt towards adult entertainment than family-friendly fun. And so I know this was before I got on the city commission, but I know that there were an adult store that sold, I believe, lingerie on the backside of Broad Street. I believe that was Tribune Street.
Yes.
And it raised a whole bunch of issues. And so I believe now that to have an adult entertainment store or an adult entertainment establishment, regardless of the zoning, you have to ask for something called a special use permit. So even if you want one, and even if it's allowed by zoning, it's not actually allowed by right in the zoning. So you still have to come in front of the board of commissioners and the planning commission and ask for a special use permit to have one of those things. Now, I certainly can't speak for anybody else. And when it comes to zoning cases, we are judge and jury, so we can't prejudge anything. Because we have to hear the evidence. But, that was put in place for a reason. And it's because, as it was spelled out in the ordinance, when you have alcohol and you have adult entertainment, statistically speaking, there's a likelihood that something bad is going to happen. It's not inevitable, and it's not 100%. But more likely than not, over the life of that establishment, something undesirable is going to happen. And so at the end of the day, I think that's where we landed at. And I think that's why the city manager asked for the investigation. And like I said, at present, I'm not sure where that is. I do know it has been asked for. I have seen the letter that the city manager sent to the chief of police asking for it. But I'll be glad to find out for you and update you.
I'd like to know more, because, we heard from, again, we showed a video of a gentleman who spoke at the city commission that day, trying to address some of these issues. And it's my understanding from him that he has also reached out to law enforcement and others and kind of push for that. And so I'd like to see where both of these have gone, because this is something that,
and the timeline behind both of them.
Yeah, because here's the thing: the timing of this, the timing of the investigation. We and our listeners really feel that we need to know kind of where this is at. This is something that we don't want to see happen again. And look, no one's having an issue with the Pride Parade. This is something that Justin and I both talk about. This has happened for years, but it just seems like this one year, all of a sudden, they wanted to incorporate this element of a kid-friendly zone. And then we have images, and we're going to show some of those in just a second. Sure. Images of things that happen in a public park. And I think that's what the uproar was about. Oh, I know that's what the uproar was about, but I think the real crux of the issue was the fact of it felt like we had no one standing up for this. And so do you know of any future plans for this to go on again? Or if this comes before you all again, what you or the other commissions may decide, or if you all have even talked about it?
So first of all, I need to write down a couple of different talking points associated with that, because you bring up some great things. And I'm sorry.
By all means, please.
I have a bad memory. All right. So the first one is the PFLAG event. You know, if they want to have an event at a city park, they are welcome to, in my opinion. I have my religious beliefs, and those religious beliefs obviously influence. I would be foolish to say that they do not influence the way that I see the world. But when it comes once again to First Amendment, I'm very particular to build a wall around that one particular issue, because if that issue falls, all the other amendments are useless. So when it comes to wanting an event, that's fine. In my personal opinion, the drag queen show for kids stepped over the line. That's my opinion. If you actually go back and watch a city commission event, and I wish I had the date, Commissioner Doss actually mentions during the meeting that he is, he's fine with the event, but he does not agree with that particular part of it. He thinks it's out of place. Commissioner Doss and I spoke in caucus before that night's city commission meeting. Did we know that kids were going to be there? I don't know. Could we have stopped it? I don't know. At the end of the day, it's somebody expressing themselves artistically. Is it? I mean, I don't know. That's a lawyer question. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah. So hold on. Let me back up for a second too. Let me ask this question as well. Walk us through the permitting process on you all's end, because I know that there are certain things that you all can do.
There is none.
And so that's kind of the situation, right? So kind of tell our listeners, if someone comes in and they fill out the paperwork and everything's right, there's really nothing that you all can do.
We don't even know about it. They go to the police station, they fill out a form. If they need to close down a public road, which in this particular instance, they did ask to close down a public road, that came to Public Works. And we had, I'm the chair of Public Works this year, and myself and two other commissioners sat down and had a long discussion about it. And what they had asked for is the road that goes beside the sidewalk that bifurcates Moe's Barbecue in that small park with the gravel parking lot on the other side. They had asked for that road to be closed. And so what we decided in Public Works is we had never closed that road for anybody else before. And that if we closed that road for that event, we were going to close it for everybody. And that if we didn't close that road for that particular event, we weren't going to close it for anybody, regardless if it was a church or everything. Because, like I said, I have my religious beliefs, but at the end of the day, I believe in treating everyone equally. If the KKK came and asked to shut down that road, obviously we would not let them. If the Jehovah's Witnesses came and asked to shut down that road, we would not let them. If Rotary came and asked to shut down that road, we would not let them. So what goes for one goes for all. We're going to treat everybody the same. In terms of knowing what people are going to protest, knowing what people are going to celebrate, know what people are going to apply for a permit and to stand out and hold up signs or honk horns or do whatever they want to, we don't know about any of that. That's strictly handled through the police department. And the main reason it's handled through the police department is if they have to actually hire a police officer to shut down a road or watch traffic or do something like that, or there could be a public, safety hazard for the participants, like a parade, for example. So we have to shut down the road and the police have to kind of escort them down the road. Other than that, the city commission has no say as to who protests or celebrates what. We can speak our piece about it, but we can't shut it down. And I don't think we should be able to, quite frankly. Now, that leads us to the issue of what if there are particular parts of an event that cross the line? That's something I think we're going to revisit in the future, because obviously From the videos that we've seen, that I've seen, my opinion is that one crossed the line. The sex toy booth absolutely crossed. That was ludicrous. We had no idea. Maybe we should have, but we don't get a list of vendors or who are going to be there. We have no idea who's going to be there. We have no idea what they're going to be displaying. But that was lewd and indecent. At a minimum, that was lewd and indecent. And I find it difficult to believe that the people who set that up didn't know that, because if you read through our ordinance, it's very explicit about who can go in those type of establishments to start with, even though they don't serve alcohol or they're not an entertainment venue. It even lists out who and what age you have to be to work in those types of establishments. And to have that booth there, I just think crosses the line. Now, I will also say, I'm glad they had the PFLAG event there. I am. From a First Amendment issue, I am happy that they were able to come and celebrate what they perceive as a freedom of their expression. Whether people agree with it or not, whether I agree with it or not, at the end of the day, I don't think it matters. And I think that's why the First Amendment is so important, because you'll get a wide variety of issue or reasoning behind certain issues. And, who am I as a city commissioner to tell somebody that they're not allowed to celebrate that? Because imagine if we had a city commissioner who didn't like guns. Well, that really, upset me. I'm a huge fan of guns. I'd love to celebrate, have a Second Amendment party, down by the river. Why not? But if a city commissioner could come up and say, you know what, I just don't particularly agree with guns and I want gun control, and therefore y'all can't have your event, that should upset everybody. Unfortunately, we can't do that. So regardless of what it is, we can't shut it down. We don't even get asked permission about what we think about it. So that's kind of where that stands. I hope that answered your questions. It was long and circuitous, but
I got what you're saying there, and I do appreciate that. I'm going to bring the slideshow back up real fast, and what we're looking at here are announcements and advertisements from some of the events that were going on. And if we look at the far right-hand corner of this is the announcement for what was going on with the Pride lineup for the PFLAG event. This was the one that was dubbed the family-friendly event, the one that they had the kids zone at, the one that they really pushed to get a lot of attention towards. And it was done so by the same organizations and the groups that have pushed these 18 and older events. And just even looking at the advertisement just for this event, that right there, if those were women that were dressed like this, that would not have been allowed at all. And I think at all. And one of the other things that you were saying, as far as not being able to keep this from happening, that's actually that's legally speaking, that's incorrect. And there are Supreme Court cases that actually allow for cities to determine what are known as city welfare and community welfare events. If it does not align with what the city or the community would be, what they perceive as being in their own interest or as at large beneficial, they do have that right to limit that, because there had been a topless parade that had been organized for the city of Chicago. Mm-hmm. It was ultimately shut down by the city commission because it went against what that city was trying to do. And that's actually within the past, I want to say less than 10 years ago. So there are legal ramifications or legal processes that can allow for this to be or that can allow for this to be stopped with that. And I don't expect y'all to know, like you said, you're not a lawyer. You're not in the, and I'm by no means at all saying that city attorney had this, because absolutely nobody had any idea that it was going to get to the level that it did.
And I think that's that. So here's the other thing too, right? No one is trying to make that like, no, this is to us, this is not covert bigotry, right? And I want to make that very clear, right? We all feel that one was pulled over our eyes. And that I feel like that's myself, other individuals included, business owners, because I don't think anyone would have had a problem with the Pride event minus the drag queen story time. And I think that's the message that we tried to get across, but that's just something that we felt was, not, I don't want to say overlooked, but I think was taken advantage of by this organization. Because if that was left out of this entire thing, I think it would have been, no one would have said anything and they would have had a blowout event.
Well, outside of the involving the kids and
that's what I mean.
Yes,
that's what I mean. Is, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's really disgruntling, right? Because I have a lot of friends in that community. I have a lot of people who I associate with, who, you know what I mean, got upset at me because of the fact of it was just, they felt that I was attacking them directly, regardless of the fact that I said, this is something that we feel children should be left out of. And now we feel that you have pulled a wool over our eyes. And I'm upset because if you'd have just taken this one element out, then none of this would have happened. And now look what you've done. Now you have put yourselves, your freedom, and everything else in jeopardy because of, for what?
Oh yeah. And I agree. And again, I'm going to bring the slideshow back up here and I want to show this one off real fast. And I actually do think they may have, like I said, pulled the wool over y'all's eyes with this type of thing, because when they made and these came from a FOIA request as far as what was presented to y'all as what would be going on that day. There is no mention of the fact that there would be sex toys on display.
Sure.
There is no mention that there would be any sort of public indecency. And there was no mention that adult entertainment licensure would have been needed, of which we have shown that under the city ordinances, under county law, under state law, and in some cases even under federal law, that would have been required in order for this to have proceeded.
And that's kind of what made me more upset than anything, is because I cannot tell you how irate I was when you see that video of that child like putting the dollar on stage. Okay. Because to me, I feel that our values as a community were attacked in this entire thing. And
and I'm sure you've seen it by now, but just for the sake of our viewers, I do want to show this real fast, just to allow folks to be able to see what we're talking about here.
Like that happened
at
a public park in my hometown.
Yes.
And that should infuriate everyone.
Especially when it was so we saw the performer there, and this was also part of their get up there. As you can see, that violates city ordinances, that violates state ordinances, that violates just about every level of legal protection on up until the federal level.
And I think that, so not to put words in his mouth, but I think to something that Mark was saying earlier was that there isn't a process right now for the city commission to do this, but this is to stop something in the permitting process. But correct me if I'm wrong, this is something that y'all are looking at to where y'all can remove elements of a permit or elements of a organization that tries to come in.
Well, there are, but again, this is something that it would be a constitutional law and a U.S. Supreme Court decisions that would.
I understand.
Be associated
I want to hear his answer.
I understand that.
No, it's. I would say this: it has not been, that particular issue has not been brought up in an official capacity in a public meeting. It has been discussed behind the scenes with several commissioners. I would say that is something that we're going to look at in the future. But to give you a particular date as to when we're going to start looking at it, I don't know, because my guess is even with Supreme Court precedents and in terms of, topless
It's
parades,
just an example of it, but yes.
yeah, it's still going to have to go through a vetting process with the city attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said, dance is an artistic expression. Obviously, the last video that you showed clearly goes against our city ordinance. You can't show a butt cheek. It's just, you can't do it. It will be discussed. What the outcome of that discussion will be, I don't know. But just know that there are city commissioners who are concerned about it going forward. And I know that sounds wishy-washy and a very politician answer. If I could answer for the other 8 of them, I would. But from my seat, I want to look at it. And do I want to see that again? No, not particularly. It has its place, but not there. Now, the first video you showed is, I believe that video goes on to show a kid going up and slipping $1.
Yes.
Throwing $1 on stage. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So up until that point, is it lewd? I'm not an attorney. I don't know. It looks like somebody wearing a 2-piece bikini. Can you see that at the beach? Yes, you can. Are they typically frolicking around and dancing? No, they're not. Are they doing it for entertainment purposes? No, they're not. It appeared to be it was clearly for an entertainment purpose. It's troublesome that it was strictly supposed to be directed towards kids.
Yes.
I don't know where that will land First Amendment wise. Because if you go back to the Crush video for the cat, right? That's the breadth and depth of the First Amendment that we're talking about dealing with here, right? They allow videos showing people crushing kittens for sexual pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not an attorney. Do I want to see it again? No. If it's up to me, will it be allowed again? No. Will the People Flag event continue? Absolutely. I respect their ability and desire to celebrate or protest anything that they would like to, or anybody's ability to celebrate or protest anything that they would like to. But that, in my opinion, crosses the line. I think it goes against our city ordinances, especially when the kid tipped. Obviously, that was inappropriate. Showing butt cheeks was clearly inappropriate. I haven't watched any other videos of that event than what I've seen on your podcast. But I imagine there's a whole, probably hours and hours of it on social media.
Yeah.
All of this we were able to pull from social media.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So honestly, what I'm having trouble with is separating somebody's First Amendment right to express themselves with clearly wanting to not sexualize our children, right? I have 2 young sons. I don't want them, overtly sexualized before they're ready. That's my decision as a parent when that happens. And when somebody throws that up in somebody's face and you can't protect your kids from it, then you do feel violated. And as you said, Jamie, that's happening in my hometown. It's like, yeah, that's not cool. The posters, I'm not an active participant in that community. I didn't know about the posters. I had not seen them. I'm not sure where they were posted. I'm sure there were lots of people who had seen them, but I hadn't seen those posters.
Well, they were also on billboards across downtown.
Yeah, they were downtown.
Yeah. They're everywhere.
They have them at the Tour. Like if you pass by Tour Taco, they're there. They had them. I don't want to say
right there above Verizon.
Yeah, the spot above Verizon. There's a certain candidate running for office. They were near that area as well, and different things of that nature downtown.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll keep a lookout for them. Not that we can.
I know, and that's you can't regulate content, right? I get that, but that's kind of the You can't regulate content. There's that's kind of the thing though, and that's kind of the heartburn that a lot of people are having, is because, you know, those of us who frequent downtown, when we say these things, it almost felt like they were being dismissed. So I do have to ask this question, and I understand if you can't answer it, right? Do you feel that the majority of the commissioners share your feelings on this?
I don't know. Well, so let me back up and ask for just a little bit more specificity on which part.
On the part of the, we'll just say the drag queen story time.
I would say it's not unanimous.
Okay.
I would say it's not unanimous.
Okay.
What about the licensure requirements for the adult entertainment establishments
That is unanimous. That is unanimous.
Okay, because I don't feel the need to pull the video up now, given what we just heard with the unanimous consent there with that, because again, we have shown that these things are that these events that are going on, that we're clearly see and we're able to define and show the videos or the photos and define what's not only in the ordinance, but seeing given what's in the videos, given the medical determinations and where these anatomical areas are per the ordinances and the violations that we're seeing within the against the ordinances.
Yeah, and you know, I guess that goes back to my whole thing about these, you know, again, if adults want to do whatever adults want to do, I have no problem with it, right?
Absolutely.
So when they start involving
as long as they have the proper licensure for it.
Yeah, and so that goes, that's a perfect point, right? When the things that went on at both establishments, they had an alcohol license, right? So which is why you have the incidents that had to be pulled for it, because they had the proper license. But when you look at Tor Taco, they had these flyers up here for these adult entertainment things. And then once we pushed the issue, they then started to host flyers for Drag Queen Story Time, which was occurred, and they were trying to run these events consecutively. So then they would have Drag Queen Story Time and then basically a strip show right afterwards. And, you know, we have images of, you know, where someone went into one of these events downtown and kind of showed what was going on in Tor Taco.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to pull those up because we have established that, you know, what they were saying.
Again,
they're against it, and I really don't want to go back into them much. But I am going to pull this up real fast because this is something that they had done, what he was referring to. As you can see, they are dubbing this drag queen story time and these drag queen shows as being family friendly, but it's being hosted by the Southern Gilfs. And as you can see, what that the acronym actually means.
Sure.
And this is the organization that's hosting these events. That they
are same people. So
yes.
So you would have the same people who are supposed to be reading the Storytime events, then going and doing these strip teases shortly afterwards. So it's not like different individuals were doing different roles. These are the same people doing the same role, which is what is, you know, again, more another level of disgruntledness.
Yes, and I do want to point out, and I'm going to pull this up real fast as well as read off what this says. Again, another part where it seems they are pulling the wool over the city commission's eyes, and this is something that they applied for a special entertainment request. So the establishment, pursuant to request permission to hold special entertainment. They do not currently have an entertainment license, but would like to add that license to their entertainment. That is, in addition to the normally allowed entertainment of disc jockeys, blah, blah, blah. The request specifically at this time is to allow a drag show at this location. They had held one previously, but they did not know that they needed a special entertainment license. And they, in this document that we, again, were able to pull from a FOIA request, says that they promised that it was explained that these events would in no way violate the city of Rome's adult entertainment ordinances, and they are not risque in any manner.
So let can I ask this question
Oh,
first?
please.
Then? So Mark, so walk us through that. So if there is something going on, and then an organization realizes that they have violated the ordinance, and they come through to correct it, what is the process for that on the city commission's end?
So any licensing involving alcohol or entertainment is handled through the city clerk's office, but any violations of that go to the Alcohol Control Commission, which previously was under city commission control. So 3 city commissioners would sit on that particular committee and handle that. A few years ago, I'm not exactly sure how many years ago, it was before I got on the city commission, that was actually decided to take away from the city commission committee system and actually make it a citizens committee. So the Alcohol Control Commission now is a 3-person citizens committee that has a liaison from the city commission. The Alcohol Control Commission, when they have something like the issue that you just showed come up in front of them, they talk about it, they discuss it, and then they will either, slap somebody on the hand, or if any violation is severe enough and punishment needs to be dealt out, then it comes to the city commission for approval, which is why the particular establishment that we had talked about earlier came to the city commission. So,
Gotcha.
So that, my understanding, that's the process.
So y'all don't have to vote to approve the alcohol licensures for establishments within the city as the city commission?
Not that I remember. I don't remember voting on any. Now that might be incorrect, but I would remember at least 1 or 2. But my understanding is no, we don't. We only listen to it in case there's a violation of it, because I think that's once again one of those things where we're the judge and the jury, similar to a zoning appeal.
Well, and again, this would seem like they violated it, and then they came back to correct it. So this would seem like this would be something that would have gone before y'all.
But
well, if there was a
again,
let's hear him speak.
Yes.
If there was a penalty laid out, and I don't know if there's a limit to the penalty. I don't, and I should know this. I'm not sure if the Alcohol Control Commission has enough authority to dole out so much penalty without having to come back to the city commission. But I would think that they don't. I would think if I would have a hard time believing that a citizens committee can do fines and shut people down, but maybe they can. Maybe all they can do is revoke licenses, which would make sense. But I don't know, because it seems like there would be some kind of judicial process if somebody's going to essentially take something away from you. But like I said, I'm not a lawyer. I should know this, but off the top of my head, I don't.
If you were to find out that this is something that maybe needs to be looked at again, because it sounds like to me, and I'm gonna put my bureaucrat hat on for a second, right? Because this is something that a lot of other municipalities are looking at too, to where you have these subcommittees or these citizen boards that come in and to take away some of the process or the long parts of, city commission meetings. If you were to look at this is something that needs to be revised or going back to the old model, is this something that you would look into?
I don't believe in. Well, let me say this. I have a difficult time with citizens committees, not because I don't appreciate citizens volunteering their time, but because at the end of the day, I'm the elected representative of the people. If they have a problem with a vote that I take or something like that, they should be able to call me. And so I don't know why the original reasoning behind the ACC was to be put to a citizens committee. I don't know. But my vote would be to bring it back under the city commission, because, if we're going to vote on things like that are substantial, people need to have representation about how they feel. And I feel that across the board, regardless of whether it's public works or public safety or, finance or anything like that, that should come through the city commission, through the elected representatives of the people.
Right.
So yeah, I'd like to take a look at it for sure.
Yeah, you are correct. Y'all are ultimately the the buck stops with y'all when it comes to any of the stuff that goes on. And from what I'm hearing, me personally on the ground, and Jamie may be hearing the same things. I can't speak to that, but you know, the crosshairs are on y'all for this, because of the fact that this ultimately does fall on y'all's shoulders or with this. One of the things that I also wanted to ask was, if given the chance, given the fact that these organizations that are putting these on and that they are moving forward, that they have essentially, in what would be my opinion, pulled the wool over y'all's eyes and tricked y'all, is there anything that is going to be taken into account once they come before y'all again to receive a licensure, to receive a request permit, or a special event permit, anything along that time, because of the fact of their prior engagements
and violations?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So to that, I would say this is my understanding is this particular issue is similar to somebody wanting to protest or celebrate something. They go to the city clerk. If the city clerk, you know, if they meet X, Y, and Z, and they pay a particular amount of money, then they are given a license. I believe in the adult entertainment ordinance, it spells out, you know, you have to be of good moral character. And I believe that constitutes not having a felony within the past 5 years. If you're less than or more than 5% ownership in an LLC or any kind of business, you have to be of good moral character. And so I believe there's 21 or 22 steps that you have to go through in a certain process, even to be able to work or serve alcohol in somewhere like that. And so if you go through all of those processes and you meet all the requirements, then a license is given. I feel, and once again, this is just me speaking as one of nine, I would feel a little bit uneasy getting the city commission involved in who receives a license. I do not feel at all bad about the city commission ruling on, once you've violated an ordinance, what happens to your license. But I would feel a little bit uneasy about the city commission getting involved in who gets a license, because politics, you know, good or bad, especially at the local level, is as much who you know and what you know about them as it is what in theory you're going to do. And so if I don't like Joe Schmo, then, you know, and I put some pressure on the city clerk, say, by gosh, you better not give him a license, then I need to stay out of that process, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And that I mean, you can't really ask for much more when it comes to, you know, from a politician. But I guess what
you don't have to insult the man.
Well, what I'm asking, well, here's kind of where I'm in this limbo thing right now with it, though, is because we did say and clarify that there is going to be an investigation for the previous things to look into those things. But if you can't get involved with the licensure part from the beginning, which I feel is a good stance, you know, what happens if they do the same thing again?
Yes, if you have almost a repeat offender.
Yeah. And how do we, or how do you all, and how do we as citizens help you all prevent from something like that happening again? Because through this whole conversation, I'm not seeing anything that can stop them from coming back, doing the same process again. And then, you know,
nothing happened.
Exactly. Because you almost have to allow for the permit. Once the permit happens, then they go out there. Once it's started, how do we stop them from violating it? Do you know what I mean? And you know, where do we get out of this cycle of allowing this? And I don't know if, you know, I guess it's not really a question, but if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, that's the disconnect when you put the job of a city commissioner in the hands of a citizen panel. That's probably what happens. Because like it or not, there is a disconnect between it.
Yeah. No, but I get here's the point, right? Because they wouldn't, in a citizen panel, if the citizen panel's there, then they're the ones who are just approving it beforehand.
No, this is just the drag show. That's just the drag show event that we're talking about what happened with the P flag, or at least in my mind, I'm thinking, how can we stop what happened with the P flag event from happening again? Nothing has taken place, or nothing has come out as far as a punishment for what they did in clear violation of local, state, and federal law. And we're still.
So before the event, I get where you're going with this, because
How do
technically,
we stop that from happening again?
If something happens to the investigation, right, they may be able to apply and get another permit,
Which they've already done.
So beforehand.
Yes.
So let me ask this other question too. How do proclamations happen?
So we don't turn down any proclamations. If you want a proclamation, we'll write you one.
Interesting.
That's pretty much what it boils down to. If you want a proclamation for Republican Party whenever it was founded, you know what? Come on up. We'll give you a proclamation.
We'll have to get one done for the show.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
I don't know how comfortable I am personally with that.
It is interesting. So what happens at the beginning of the caucus is the city administration will have proclamations printed out, and beforehand we really don't know what they are. Like I got to last night at the city commission meeting, I gave one out for arts and cultures. I didn't know I was going to do that. But what happens is they're given to the mayor signs them, and then whoever the mayor is doles out who, they ask who wants to speak on this. And sometimes they'll assign it, and sometimes they'll just ask. And so that's what happens when any of them. And I think at the end of the day, that's probably it. That's a double-edged sword, because what happens is, obviously, if the mayor asks you to talk about something or proclaim something that you're not comfortable doing, you can always deny it. But you're still sitting behind the dais, and it's still presented as coming from the body of the city of Rome. And at the end of the day, the city of Rome is supposed to represent the citizenry in all its glory and everything that, what you want to celebrate, what you want to protest. So I don't think it's a bad idea to turn down somebody who wants a proclamation, because as y'all know, politics ebbs and flows. And, if you want a proclamation for the Second Amendment, that's great. If you have 6 city commissioners who think that's a horrible idea, I personally don't think they should be able to turn that down. It's not. The city of Rome is not mine or any other commissioners to proclaim or rebuke. All we are at the end of the day is a vessel for the citizens to celebrate something. And that's, in my opinion, that's what proclamations are. We have proclamations for everything from gastrointestinal disease awareness to, not too long ago, we gave a key away to a citizen who it was very prominent in the community and has done great things for it. So, we may give a key to the city of somebody. Does everybody in the city like that person? No. Do all the city commissioners like that person? Maybe not. It just depends on who the person is. But, it's just the city doesn't belong to me. Neither do the proclamations, if that makes sense.
Understood. And I'm leading with this a little bit.
My opinion.
I'm sorry. That's
my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm leading a little bit with this. So we talked about the proclamation. What's the time frame on a proclamation? Like when will y'all receive it? Before? Is there a time frame before y'all can receive a submittal for a proclamation before the next meeting, or how does that work?
I don't know, but I can find out for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason why I asked that is this. All right. And here's kind of what, as a citizen, a lot of us felt when we read it throughout the paper, is there wasn't much information. Like you had information if you're a chamber member about kind of the P flag event getting ready to kick off.
Mm-hmm.
If you weren't a chamber member, you really didn't hear about this until, a couple weeks before it happened. And then you saw the website launch and all the businesses that were a partner to it. Then it seemed like once everyone got in the uproar about it, then the city comes out with a proclamation on it. So that's where I feel a lot of this disgruntledness comes from too, because it almost seems as if this was hidden. And then next thing you know, the city is in support of it because there's a proclamation.
No, that I can see that. I absolutely can see that point of view of it for sure. I don't know what to say about it other than I've never known of somebody who's asked for a proclamation who's been turned down. I don't suppose that means that we can't do that, but like I said, from my seat on the city commission, I would rather err on the side of caution and just say, if you want to celebrate something, come on and ask for it, and we'll do it, and whether I agree with it or not. Because at the end of the day, the last person you want deciding whether or not you can celebrate something is a bureaucrat or a politician. I mean, because
well, as a bureaucrat, I will say that I don't know. Sometimes bureaucrats need to decide some things, but
I think we just need to get rid of them all. But that's just my opinion.
As Justin says, sometimes I can be bureaucrat man, but
we have an entire thing for that theme music and everything.
No, that's yeah. But look, this is a complicated event, and in terms of societal and cultural events, this is a complicated one. And my own personal view is that if you're an adult, do what you want to do. Don't hurt kids. Don't hurt people. Don't go over the line. What you do in your home is your castle. You should be able to shoot somebody if they walk through it, if you don't want them there, without even having to drag the body out. But once you're in it, you can do what you want to do. Just don't hurt kids, don't hurt other people. At the same time, this particular issue, it resonates with, you can't find a person who doesn't have an opinion on it. And I think part of the reason for that is because for eons, humans have existed in a particular nucleus that involves a man, a woman, and children. And since 2015, when the Supreme Court said that anybody can marry, regardless of sexual orientation, and you have to allow them to have a marriage license, we as a society are being asked to forget the past 20,000 years of how we've lived culturally and societally and evolutionarily speaking, and we're just supposed to turn it on our head. And some people have an issue with that, and a lot of people don't. And you know, when you're trying to work through difficult issues, the best thing to do is to talk about it. The worst thing to do is go hide in your corner and talk bad about somebody. You don't solve any issues by just, basically talking, down about one person or another, and without trying to come to a solution. Now, at the end of the day, there may not be a solution. Some people will be ardently against it, and some people will be crazy for it. And, they'll love the idea. So we as Americans right now are stuck in that process, and nobody's ever been asked to go through that process before. And we're fumbling through it, and rightfully so. Anybody else over the last 20,000 years would have fumbled through it also. What are we supposed to do? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe 100 years from now we'll have it figured out. But to think that changing something like that culturally is not going to cause ripples in society that's not a reasonable expectation. So we're fumbling through this as best as we can as humans.
Well, again, that's also one of the reasons why we have elections and have elected officials there to pass the laws that are supposed to be reflective upon the communities that they are representing. And again, please don't take this as being pointed directly towards you with any of this. The laws that were passed do not allow for any of this to go on, and or at least what had happened, it's prohibited. Not just locally, but state and federal. And the fact that it has gone on and there has been nothing that has come out about it, or there has been nothing that has been done about it, and it's been several months now, it hasn't been really addressed. Nothing's been said about it much. I understand that there are investigations at the time, but these are new investigations. Let's be honest. These investigations have just been opened up. It's a lot of people are beginning to think and beginning to say that it's just because it's starting to get this pressure from outside of the city that these investigations are even beginning to take place.
About this whole issue and how we can, as a society, work through these things, because that's going to be important. Like, this isn't going away. You know what I mean? It's not going away. The only thing that we can do is, like you just said, Mark, continue to have the conversation, because, outside of being able to vote for elected officials, there's no other way of citizens to kind of get in the in-between on, handling these issues.
Well, even with artistic expressions in terms of baking and art and all these other kinds of things, it's just, we're fumbling through it. And when you fumble through something, yes, you have to be vigilant, and yes, you have to be smart about it. And yes, you have to be thorough, but you also have to have a certain amount of grace associated with it, because we're all human and we all act foolish, and we all do stupid things, and we all say stupid things, and we all do things that we regret. Unfortunately, most of the time we can't forget that now because it's posted all over social media, but we're just fumbling through it. Now, I will say that I agree with you. Our ordinance is clearly in place. It's clearly in place for a reason. I'll go back to, statistically speaking, when you have alcohol and adult entertainment, regardless of what that adult entertainment is and who its audience is and who it's for, the possibility of issues is exponential. It just is. I mean, that you mix alcohol and things like that, and that's what you get. And our ordinance, I think, clearly lays out that we understand that, and that I think the ordinance tries to walk a tightrope between First Amendment and being smart about the issue. And of course, like I said, we as humans fail. And as city commissioners, I obviously didn't know about these issues, or at least the majority of them, and that's on me. I'll 100% take responsibility for that. Hopefully it won't happen again, but that's a hope. It's not a for sure. But
I will say the ordinance is very well laid out, in at least in my opinion, of how well it addresses both the First Amendment issues and the issues of community welfare. It is very well laid out with that, and I do believe that, again, as we showed in the slide earlier, that because y'all may have been misled with this, or I think that y'all probably were misled with this. I would like to see more of a, at least from my perspective, more of a vigilance when it comes to these sort of things. And that kind of leads me to my next question involving all of this is, you say that you don't have, so it's the civilian commission that approves the alcohol licensures. What about the entertainment licensures? Do they also approve them?
I think that is solely at the discretion of the city clerk. But once those are violated, I believe that goes back to the Alcohol Control Commission also. Because rarely does one not accompany the other.
Yeah.
So to my understanding, we do not have an entertainment control commission. but we do have an alcohol control commission. And my guess is, without having the process and the ordinance in front of me, my guess is it falls under their purview also.
So maybe we should follow up with our city clerk and finding out exactly where this potentially goes next as far as the process and keeping this from continuing downtown, because as you said in that city commission meeting, there is a fine edge between a family friendly zone and the just the rambunctious community destroying element that could be brought in these sort of environments.
Well,
so
and I think you know, Mark, you said that there's some things that you're going to look into.
Yes, absolutely.
Look into for us, and I know that there's some other city commissioners that we want to try to get in front of too on the show and get their opinion as well. And you know, we're going to periodically continue to have this special, because I think this is very important that we, again, however we do it as a community, continue to talk about this and work through these issues. I mean, because I learned a lot today when it came to the process, because the fact of, I just have to say again, the fact of how it happened and the perception that it was almost seemed that there was a narrative being driven by the majority of the city commission. And, you know, if that is not the case, then I think it's time that we as citizens help explore how to correct that from the standpoint of what checks and balances are in place here.
Well, they also have the option of passing new ordinances to allow for this type of things to happen. And they have the ability to then come back and address a lot of it as well. But it's, I don't know. I'm kind of torn right now with a lot of this. And Mark, I sincerely appreciate a lot what you're saying with all of this, and I really do. But I am one that holds our elected officials to a higher account and a higher standard when it comes to getting things or getting these sort of things addressed, and to getting their opinions and their thoughts out publicly and telling folks how a lot of this, how they feel a lot of this. And like I said, I sincerely appreciate you coming on the show and telling us with what your thought process behind this was and where you lie with a lot of this. That really goes a long way in my book. I just wanted to say, thank you for that, because prior to this, we were ready to throw you under the bus. I left that meeting in a fume. I called Jamie and I told him, all right, we are putting together a show and we are going to run every single one of them under the bus. We are going to expose every bit of this, and we will throw a significant amount of money behind this and targeting Rome and getting this information out to everyone that can possibly see it. And telling
again,
them what's going on and what's not being addressed.
To give you some kudos, again, because of the fact of, like, you're not the only person we've reached out to. You're the only one who answered.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
That speaks volumes about your character and you as a person. Because we talk to people about trying to come on to talk about their thought processes through this, about why they wanted to put on this event, about why even after us reaching out to them, they still decided to try to go ahead with that portion of the Drag Queen Storytime event. Like, I mean, we basically even told them, hey, look, we know people are protesting. I'm willing to put my neck out there and go out there with you if you remove the Drag Queen Storytime. And yet still we were thrown under the bus, and so that we're just going to do this anyway. And then this is what happened. Like, this is kudos, honestly, because no one else is doing what you're doing and willing to put their neck out there.
Well, yeah, especially in that meeting when every single one of the city commissioners, while Mr. Ward was up there speaking, it was just stone cold outside of our newest elected official, who smirked afterwards, which was probably the first part that really got under my skin. When that little smirk came on their face, I was done. at that point in time.
Well, look, I'll be willing to talk about anything else y'all want to talk about, state level, federal level. I'm an open book. I don't hide anything, or try not to. I try to be truthful. I appreciate what y'all said about me. I think it's probably a little bit too, y'all being a little bit too gracious, but I appreciate the kudos anyway. It's I get a lot of crap for being in the middle, and I will tell you up front, I am in the middle, and I'm not a card holding party member of either party. I vote for people and their platforms, not a party. And I really believe that at the local level. I think it should be issue driven. And I know there's a lot of people who disagree with that. And I think I understand the majority of the reason why. It's like when somebody votes for something, it's more easy to understand a platform than a person.
Yeah.
So if the person, advocates for a platform, then you understand in theory where they're coming at. It's really difficult to do that on a local level, in a municipality level, especially. And people think Rome is large. Rome is not that big of a city in terms of these things. And I want people who are Democrats in the city of Rome to be able to feel comfortable calling me and expecting that I will help them out with their issue, just as the same as Republicans. I don't want to feel like off the bat I've alienated anybody, and I get a lot of crap for that. Now, when you get to the state level and the federal level, I have different opinions about things, but especially at the local level, you should be able to look at my voting record and hopefully not tell, if at all, which party I belong to, because I should be able to vote on issues and for people and not party. And I know that upsets people, and I'm willing to deal with the consequences of that. But that's,
Well, hey, that's what's raised a lot of eyebrows. You definitely have a lot of people's attention in a good and a negative way, like you were saying, because, people see it. People see like, well, he voted for this way, but he voted for this way. And our listeners tell us that all the time. they were like, is this guy one of us or is he not?
yeah, no, that's fair. I'm a Roman. I'm from the citizens of
Rome. As you should be.
Yeah.
Jamie and I differ a lot with what we believe in. And, we've done episodes in the past about that as well.
Yeah.
So, it's not like this is just a one voice type of a platform.
Yeah. We even have a show called Justin versus Jamie, and we're getting ready for round 2. It's we'll pick 3 issues. He'll pick one, I'll pick one, and then we'll know one that both of us is looking at. And then we'll do kind of like the Mortal Kombat sound effects.
Oh yeah.
We'll argue our points. So you're not alone in some instances, but I think it's, again, thank you for your time. We're kind of getting close to our time frame, but we just want to say again, thank you. We want to follow up with you pretty soon, maybe in a month or so, and then just try to get some of these answers, and then maybe get you out there some more to our listeners to explain your point of view and what the commission's doing.
So let me go over one more time, just so everybody, and we have it on video, so I know. I'm going to get back to y'all about how the proclamation process works.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to get back to you about if the ACC actually controls entertainment license.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to get back to you about where we are in the investigation. Is that
yes?
Does that sound like a good summary?
That's it.
Yes.
Thank y'all for all that you do. Thank you for bringing this issue up, because without your podcast, I would not have known the majority of what I now know about it. So kudos to y'all for doing what journalists should do, and that's exposing things that either politicians willfully choose to ignore or are ignorant about. So kudos to y'all on that, and I appreciate y'all allowing me to come on your platform and talk.
And this is it again, not a threat, but we will continue to follow up and press on this and keep it in the eye until something is done about it.
Yeah, and I think this is a good start to the conversation as well. So
that's good journalists should do. Yeah.
All right. Thanks,
So,
Mark.
Mark, I appreciate you coming on, and I do hope that you have a good evening.
You too. I appreciate y'all very much.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.